Amid the wedding music and applause, my grandson suddenly ran toward me, his face pale as a sheet, whispering words that froze my entire world. Grandpa, he's not the groom. He's the man the FBI is after. If they fly to Mexico tomorrow morning, Mom will never come back. In that instant, I looked at my daughter, smiling blissfully under the crystal lights, completely unaware that the man holding her hand was a criminal. And I knew then, a father can endure anything in life except standing still while his child walks into hell. 15 minutes later, the police stormed into the ballroom, champagne still pouring, and the very man showered with rose petals was handcuffed right in front of hundreds of stunned guests. No one could believe it. Just one whisper from a 15-year-old boy had unraveled an interstate web of fraud. And I, a 69-year-old father, had been forced to choose between silence or saving my daughter from a predator disguised as a groom. Before I tell you the whole journey, from that whisper at the altar to the moment justice walked in through the music, please hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and leave a comment telling me where you're listening from. Because you, the ones who still believe in truth, are the only reason I keep sharing. The stories families try to bury, forever. The sound of violins filled the grand hall of Aspen Ridge Country Club. Crystal chandeliers cast shimmering light over white-clothed tables, champagne glasses sparkling like tiny stars. I sat at table number 12, the farthest corner, where I could see everything yet remain hidden behind rows of white roses. Amid the sweet air, my heart felt as heavy as a stone on my chest. Then Aiden, my grandson in a navy suit slightly too big for his thin frame, quietly slipped toward me. He bent close to my ear, voice trembling but urgent, as if afraid someone might hear. "Grandpa, you have to stop this, before they go on their honeymoon, please." I flinched slightly. Aiden's face was pale, his eyes wide as though he had seen a ghost. I turned to him, trying to stay calm. "Why, son—" Aiden swallowed hard, his gaze darting, his small hand clutching my jacket. "He's not who he says he is. I heard him out there with some men. He used a different name. He bragged that he'll take all of Mom's money, and yours too." The sounds around me blurred, replaced by the pounding of my heartbeat. Just a few steps away, I saw Clare, my daughter, radiant in her gown, laughing with friends, unaware of everything. Marcus Hale, the groom, tall and polished in a black tuxedo, raised his glass, flashing that charming smile I had never trusted. I'd had dozens of reasons to doubt Marcus for months, but hearing it from my grandson on this very day, my heart plummeted. Aiden had always been an honest boy. I had never known him to lie. Few kids his age carried such maturity, and that's why I believed. Every word. I squeezed his shoulder gently, trying to steady him. "Slow down, Aiden. What exactly did you hear? Tell me clearly." He shook his head, tears glimmering. "We don't have time. He said once the wedding's done, everything will be his. He's planning something, Grandpa. You can't let them fly to Mexico tomorrow. If you do, we'll lose Mom forever." Mexico. I remembered Claire laughing shyly when she mentioned Marcus had planned a surprise honeymoon in Cancun. I'd only chuckled back then. Now, hearing it again from Aiden, those two words felt like a knife. My hand trembled as I lifted my champagne glass, the liquid reflecting my weary face, the dark circles under my eyes. I had lost Helen, my wife, 3 years ago, and since then Claire had longed for love to fill that void. But if Marcus was just a predator in a businessman's suit, then everything my daughter believed in was an illusion. The host's voice boomed, inviting everyone to toast the happy couple. I raised my glass, but the champagne tasted bitter. As laughter echoed around us, I knew Aiden and I now shared a secret, powerful enough to end this wedding. I leaned closer to him and whispered, "Son, what you just told me changes everything. But we must be smart. No rash moves. We'll act, but wisely." Aiden nodded, his small shoulders trembling. He was only 15, At that age, he should be thinking about homework, basketball, and laughing with friends, not carrying a secret that could shatter his mother's wedding. I leaned back, feigning calm. Across the room, Marcus was giving a speech, his voice loud, confident, victorious. His eyes flicked toward my table, lips curling in that smug grin. I'd seen that look before, the look of a man who knows he's winning. But he didn't know that just a few feet away, his empire of lies had already begun to crack, thanks to a boy's whisper. I took a sip of champagne, but tasted only resolve. Maybe everyone here would turn their backs on me, just like they did years ago with my other son-in-law, Jason. But this time was different. I didn't just have suspicion. I had Aiden, who had seen and heard it all. The question burned in my mind, how could I tell Claire the truth without destroying her happiness? I clenched my fists. One thing was certain. If I stayed silent, when she flew to Mexico in a few days, I'd lose her forever. The chandelier light shimmered across the tablecloth like ripples on water. I lifted my gaze to Marcus Hale's radiant grin and thought, your game just began. And I, Franklin Doyle, will not let my daughter become your prey. I still remember that fateful night, the first time I met Marcus Hale, in Claire's new apartment in Midtown Denver. Snow fell gently outside, sparkling under the streetlights. I brought a bottle of red wine I'd kept for years, hoping to create a warm atmosphere. The apartment was on the 18th floor with glass doors opening to the skyline, but I barely noticed the view. From the moment I stepped inside, my first impression of Marcus weighed heavily on me. He stood at the door, tall and broad-shouldered in a crisp white shirt. His gray eyes gleamed with excessive confidence. I smiled and extended my hand. Nice to meet you, Marcus. I'm Franklin, Claire's father. He stared at my hand for a moment, smirked, then slipped his arm around Claire's waist as if marking territory. Oh, Mr. Franklin, just like Claire said, an old-school suburban pensioner, huh? He chuckled, leaving my handshake hanging awkwardly in the air. Claire flushed, quickly cutting in. Dad, come in. Dinner's ready. I withdrew my hand, swallowing the sting of humiliation. In my mind, a small red mark appeared, the first warning sign. The living room glowed warmly, but what pierced my heart was the blue armchair by the window. That chair used to be mine every time I visited, where I'd read with Aiden or sip afternoon tea with Claire. Tonight, Marcus sprawled across it, legs crossed, his silver watch flashing under the light. He gestured around the room. These old furnishings could use an upgrade. You deserve something more modern. Claire looked uneasy, but forced a smile, while I felt a crack form inside me. Aiden was at the kitchen counter doing homework. He looked up, a flicker of protest in his eyes as he saw Marcus dominating every word. The boy said softly, Mom, that chair's fine. Grandpa likes sitting there. Marcus burst out laughing, his tone sharp as steel. He'll have to get used to change, kiddo. Every family evolves. Claire pressed her lips together and quietly cleared the dishes. The air grew so heavy I had to change the subject, complimenting her soup. But Marcus pulled the spotlight back to himself, talking endlessly about his consulting work. Impressive words with no substance. I asked casually, So who are your main clients? He smirked, sipping his wine. Rich folks who like smart investments. Long story, probably not your thing. His gaze flicked over me, just long enough to make it clear. He didn't see me as someone worth respecting. During dinner, Claire tried to mention Aiden's math award at school. Marcus wagged dismissively. The boy needs more discipline. Kids these days lack respect and direction. I'll help him learn what responsibility means. The chill that ran through me was instant. For a split second, I saw Jason, Claire's ex-husband, in the way Marcus looked at Aiden, condescending and controlling. When dinner ended, I put on my coat and thanked Claire. She walked me to the door, worry clouding her eyes. Dad, I know Marcus can be a bit blunt, but he's a good man. He just needs time. I didn't reply. As the elevator doors closed, the image of Marcus lounging in my chair burned in my mind. One more thing planted my suspicion. While Claire was in the kitchen, Marcus stepped onto the balcony to take a call. His voice dropped low, clearly not wanting to be overheard. I couldn't make out his words, but I caught a glimpse of the number on his phone, ending in 781. When he came back, he was all smiles again, as if nothing had happened. That night, sitting in my car under falling snow, I turned on the heater and felt a heavy dread settle in. The cold outside was nothing compared to the chill of realizing Claire might be walking into a trap she couldn't see. I started the engine, the rumble drowning out my thoughts. But deep inside, a mental list had already begun, and at the top was one name, Marcus Hale. I had heard that whisper, and I knew. There were only 7 days before they vanished with my daughter. And I, a 69-year-old man, would have to choose. Stay silent or turn this wedding into a battlefield of truth. Sunday morning, the snow had stopped. Denver lay under a gray sky, mist drifting lazily over the distant Rockies. I sat in my familiar kitchen, filtering coffee grounds, the warm bitterness filling the air. My wooden house in Cherry Creek had always brought me peace, but that morning every corner felt tense, warning of a confrontation I couldn't avoid. The doorbell rang. I opened it to find Claire in a gray coat, hair hastily tied, dark circles under her eyes, signs of a sleepless night. She didn't smile. "Dad, I need to talk." I let her in. The wooden chair by the table was still warm from my cup of coffee, but she refused to sit, standing by the window with folded arms, staring out into the foggy garden. Her voice was tight as wire. "I know that look you give Marcus. You hate him." I set the cup down slowly. "I don't hate him, Claire. I just see things that don't feel right." "Don't feel right?" she snapped, eyes flaring. "You're always like this. Whoever I bring home, you dissect, you judge. You did it with Jason and now Marcus. You always think you're right, and I'm blind." The name Jason stabbed old wounds. I took a deep breath. "Jason betrayed you, Claire. I just wanted you to see the truth sooner." Her voice cracked. Part anger, part hurt. At least Jason wasn't the monster you made him out to be. He was weak, yes, but I handled it. You're the one who makes me feel like I'm always wrong, like I can't think for myself. I'm tired of it. I stayed silent, letting the clock tick fill the room. In my eyes, she was still the little girl who used to study by the fireplace, who cried when she failed gym class. But standing there was a 41-year-old woman, fierce, defending her choices like a soldier guarding her territory. "Marcus loves me," Claire said, trembling but firm. "He makes me feel special. And if you can't accept that, you'll lose me. This is my choice, not yours." I sat frozen. The coffee in front of me had gone cold, but the bitterness lingered on my tongue. The words, "lose me," fell heavy in the kitchen like stones sinking in a still lake. I said quietly, "Claire, I'm not trying to control you. I'm trying to protect you. But if you see my concern as a burden, I'll stay silent. Just remember, I wasn't wrong about Jason, and this time, my instincts aren't baseless." Claire gripped her bag and took a deep breath. "That's enough. I just came to say this. I hope you'll come to the wedding and bless us. But if you're planning to oppose it, then it's better you don't come." She turned and left, leaving behind the faint scent of her perfume and the echo of the closing door thudding in my chest. I sat still, my veined hands resting on the cold table. Outside, a sparrow fluttered away, leaving an empty patch of sky. I took one last sip of coffee, bitter to the core. One question gnawed at me. Would I lose my daughter again like I did with Jason, just for daring to tell a truth she didn't want to hear? I looked around the kitchen, the cups, the wooden chairs, all unchanged except for the cold emptiness across the table. Claire had gone, but her words, "accept or lose me," hung in the air like a sentence I couldn't escape. That night, I sat alone in the living room, the yellow light spilling across an old gray rug. I poured another glass of bourbon, but the burn did nothing to ease the weight in my chest. When Claire walked out, one name echoed in my head, Jason. Everything with my former son-in-law had started with comfort, or what I thought was comfort. After years of seeing Claire date musicians and artists who only worried me, Jason had seemed like a relief, a steady accountant with a small downtown office, polite and well-dressed. I even breathed easier when Claire announced their engagement after 6 months. Finally, I thought, she's chosen stability. But the early warning signs had been there. I remembered one evening when our family had dinner at an Italian restaurant. Claire was animatedly talking about a funny coworker, her eyes lighting up like they did in her college days. Jason cut her off, his hand pressing down on hers under the table. He jokes a lot, huh? Maybe you shouldn't be too friendly. Maintaining a professional image matters. The smile faded from her face, replaced by stiff silence. Another time, when I asked about one of Claire's old friends, Jason cut in. Sarah? She's a bad influence on you. Being around people like that only leads you astray. Claire gave an awkward smile and changed the subject. I noticed that little by little, her list of friends grew shorter and relationships disappeared without a trace. I once asked quietly, Honey, why haven't you seen Sarah or Michelle lately? Claire answered, Just busy, Dad, but her smile was crooked and empty. Then came the clothes. Jason often picked out dresses for Claire for every event, explaining that it was important to maintain a professional image for his career. I could see Claire becoming less herself, slowly, turning into a shadow, walking beside her husband. I tried to hold back, thinking maybe I was just being overprotective. But the day Aiden, only 7 years old then, innocently said, Uncle Jason has friends over when Mom's at work. There's a blonde lady who brings cookies. That child's remark hit me like an alarm bell. That evening I went quietly to a bar in Cherry Creek, where Jason often went. I sat in a dark corner with a beer in hand, and just as I feared, he walked in with a young blonde woman in office attire. They talked, joked, hands brushing hands. I watched for 20 minutes, each moment like a needle in my chest. Telling Claire the truth the next day was the most painful experience of my life. I chose my words carefully, but instead of thanking me, Claire shouted, You're always suspicious. You don't want me to be happy. Her tears streamed down while I stayed silent, feeling as if I had just cut off a tender branch. It was only when Aiden himself asked his mother, Where's the blonde lady who brought cookies? That Jason's mask slipped. The truth came out, and the marriage collapsed. But instead of feeling protected by her father, Claire felt betrayed twice, once by her husband and once by me. She survived the divorce, but the look she gave me afterward was tinted with caution and doubt. I understood why. In her eyes, I was the father who was always right, but always wrecking happiness. That scar never healed. Now looking at Marcus, I saw the familiar signs: possessiveness, refined contempt, steamrolling words. But Claire didn't want to listen. She feared repeating the old script, feared I would become the destroyer again. I sat in the silent living room, Helen's photo smiling gently from the wooden shelf. I whispered, Helen, if you were here, you'd know how to talk to Claire. I only have firmness, but you had gentleness. If only. Outside, the wind hissed through the window frame, reminding me that time was running out. If I stayed silent, Marcus would take Claire to Mexico, and this time I might lose my daughter forever. I folded that frame of memory like a dusty book. But when I looked up, Marcus Hale's shadow flickered in my mind, blending with Jason's image from years ago. A voice rang in my head. This time, Franklin, will you let history repeat itself, or will you act before it's too late? I remembered a Friday afternoon, snow falling like chalk dust, the sun sinking behind the Rockies and leaving Denver awash in lavender light. I was bent over pruning dry rose canes in the backyard when I heard a familiar sound, the heavy thud of a backpack on the porch. I looked up. Aiden appeared, school jacket rumpled, breath puffing white. He was the same as always, thin frame, eyes older than his age. He didn't knock, but walked straight into the yard, picking up dead branches to help me as if it were a habit. "Grandpa," he began softly, "I need to talk." I put down the shears and wiped my hands on an old cloth. "Go ahead, Aiden. I'm listening." He was quiet for a few seconds, eyes drifting to the white fence. Then the words burst out like a secret held too long. "I don't like Marcus." I looked at my grandson and nodded slowly. "I don't either." He turned, eyes bright with relief. "I knew you'd believe me, because, there are things that aren't normal." Aiden told me. First, Marcus had 2 phones. One he used openly, to call my mom, to call partners. But the other was a black one. He always hid. I once saw him out on the balcony, whispering into that phone for hours, and when Mom came home, he made it disappear. Second, he often rifled through Mom's desk. Last week, Claire went to the supermarket, and Aiden was doing homework at home. He said Marcus sat at the desk, opened the drawer, took out a stack of bank papers, and flipped through them page by page. When he noticed Aiden watching, he smiled and pretended to be organizing paperwork. Third, he repeatedly asked about my Cherry Creek house. "How much is your grandpa's house worth? Is he still paying a mortgage, or is it fully paid off?" he asked bluntly, making Aiden shiver. Hearing that, blood rushed to my face. This house, where Helen and I raised Claire, had become a target in the calculations of a man I had never trusted. Aiden lowered his head and whispered, "Grandpa, he also asked Mom about your pension. Mom said it wasn't relevant, but he kept pressing. I heard everything. I'm scared. He wants money." I stayed silent, gripping the rose shears so hard the veins stood out on my hand. Then Aiden added one more detail, small but hair-raising. "Do you remember the night at River Oaks Bistro? Is the server named Betty? I saw her looking at Marcus strangely, like she recognized him from somewhere. When I looked back, Marcus shot her a quick, cold glance. I think she knows something." I paused. Another odd puzzle piece fell into place. Betty, the waitress who had served our family for many years, was kind, always remembering what Claire liked. If she had met Marcus somewhere else, that could be a key. Aiden looked at me, voice solemn. "I don't dare tell Mom. She'll be angry, think I'm making it up. But I know you understand. You believe me." I set my hand on the boy's shoulder, small shoulders carrying a weight many adults couldn't bear. "Aiden, you did the right thing. But from now on, be careful. Don't let Marcus know you're watching him. Act normal. Study, play. But observe. Can you do that?" He nodded hard. In the pale purple dusk, his eyes shone with uncommon steadiness. I thought, Helen, our grandson, is growing up too fast. We stayed quiet a while longer, only the crisp snip of shears and the thud of dry stems hitting the ground. I knew each rose cane cut today was a metaphor for what I was about to do. Cut Marcus out of Claire's life before it was too late. As night fell, Aiden slung on his backpack and left to sleep over at a friend's house. I walked him to the gate and watched his thin figure fade under the streetlights. Inside me, resolve had formed. This time, I would not lose my daughter, and I would not let my grandson grow up in the shadow of a con man. I stepped back into the house. It was still and quiet. On the table lay a bank statement Claire had forgotten the day before. I rested my hand on it, a cold question rising in me. "Marcus Hale, what exactly are you after?" And I, Franklin Doyle, am ready to find out to the very end. On Friday night, with less than 2 weeks before the wedding, Claire called me. Her voice was pleading but carried a hint of insistence. "Dad, Marcus wants to invite you to dinner at River Oaks Bistro, a family meet-up before the ceremony. I think you should go." I agreed, partly to observe Marcus further, and partly because I didn't want Claire to think I was avoiding him. River Oaks Bistro sat in an old building downtown with warm yellow lights, dark wooden tables and chairs, and landscape paintings of the mountains on the walls. It was where Claire and I had often had lunch, ordered their famous onion soup, and talked comfortably. But today, as I walked in, the feeling was different. Marcus was already at the table. Dark suit, silver watch, throwing off glints from the lights, smile wide as if he owned the place. Claire sat beside him, slightly awkward. I sat down, the wooden chair creaking. "Mr. Doyle," Marcus began, sugary and fake, "I want to thank you for raising Clare, the wonderful woman I'm about to marry." I nodded lightly. "Thank you." Before we even ate, he launched into his speech. "We want the wedding to be truly special. Aspen Ridge Country Club, fresh flowers, and a live band. A day worthy of Clare. But as you know, that kind of event isn't cheap. The venue alone is more than $12,000. Add catering, photographer, everything else. At least $35,000. He paused, sipped his wine, and stared at me. Claire lowered her face, twisting her napkin. I understood. He was waiting for me to volunteer to fund it. I stayed quiet for a few seconds, and then asked plainly, "So how much will you be putting in, Marcus?" He smiled and gestured grandly. "Of course I'll contribute. But Claire's marketing salary only covers a small portion. You're her father, with a pension and a spacious house. Your daughter deserves a dream wedding. I don't think you want people whispering that Claire had to keep it modest because her father was stingy, do you?" Each word slid across the table like a blade. I could feel nearby diners glancing over, catching bits of the conversation. The warm, familiar room had turned into a stage where Marcus tried to force me into playing the generous father. Before I could respond, the waitress arrived, Betty. She'd worked at the bistro for more than 10 years, hair silvered at the edges with a kind smile. Seeing me, she blinked in surprise. "Oh, Mr. Doyle, it's been a while since I've seen you and Claire." Then her gaze landed on Marcus. For a heartbeat, her smile faltered. She looked him over, eyes showing a trace of confusion. Marcus noticed and instantly covered it with a slick grin, ordering quickly, "Your best bottle of red wine, and the steak, medium rare." Betty nodded and left, but I caught her glancing back as if she had recognized someone from elsewhere. Another small piece fell into place. Marcus turned back, his voice dropping, edged with frost. "I hope you understand. This wedding is your last chance to prove you support Claire. Don't disappoint her." Claire rushed in. "Dad, I know this is expensive, but I really want a memorable day. If you can't help, I won't blame you. But—" Her voice trailed off, eyes pleading. I looked at my daughter, then at Marcus, the man cornering me. Inside, a storm raged, but I nodded slowly. "All right, I'll cover the shortfall." Marcus smiled in open triumph. Claire exhaled in relief and squeezed my hand in thanks, but I knew inside. I had just bought a ticket to go deeper into his game. When dinner ended, Marcus stood and extended his hand, as if he actually wanted to shake this time. I offered mine. His handshake was strong, cold, held a beat too long, as if to stake his victory. Leaving the bistro, the night wind cut my face. Through the window I saw Betty standing in the kitchen, her eyes still following me, confused. I knew there was something she wanted to say, but couldn't yet. And one day I would have to find out. I drove through the thin snowfall, my hands clenched on the wheel. Marcus thought he had tied me into his game, but he didn't know that during this very dinner, an accidental witness had recognized his face, and perhaps Betty would be the most crucial piece to rip off that mask. The wedding day arrived. Colorado's sky was unusually clear after a week of clouds. From afar, Aspen Ridge Country Club stood out like a white palace among snow-covered pines, its steep roof reflecting on a glassy lake. Luxury cars lined the entrance, guests dressed to the nines, champagne in hand, laughing and chatting. I stepped out of my old sedan in a charcoal suit I'd worn for years. While the other men flaunted tailored tuxedos and gleaming gold watches, I knew I looked different, but I didn't care. I cared only about Claire, the child I once carried in my arms, now placing her life into the hands of a man I didn't trust. The main hall blazed with light, crystal chandeliers hung high, white roses and orchids stretching from the doors inward. It all radiated the opulence Marcus had always bragged about. Clare appeared in a white gown, its train sweeping the floor, her face glowing with happiness. Applause filled the room. My heart twinged. She truly believed this was her dream day. I received the seating card from the attendant and saw my name at table number 12, the farthest corner next to the kitchen doors, where the clatter of knives and plates drowned out the soft music. Meanwhile, Marcus and his family sat at the center table, spread out like a stage. I sat in the cold wooden chair, surrounded by distant relatives I'd met fewer than 2 times. They nodded politely and turned back to their own conversations. I looked out into the hall. Marcus was raising his glass, his confident gaze sweeping the crowd, deliberately skipping over my table. The music faded, and the microphone clicked on. Marcus stood, champagne in hand, with a wide smile. "Ladies and gentlemen, today is a monumental day for Clare and me. I want to thank you all for being here to witness our love." Applause rose. I kept silent. Marcus continued, voice drawn out, and aimed at me. "Some people said we moved too fast. Some doubted us. But we've proven that when hearts are moved, time stops mattering. Isn't that right?" Laughter burst out as glasses lifted. Only I noticed his eyes locking onto mine, full of challenge. Then he said, dropping his voice, but still loud enough for all to hear, "Today is also the day we leave behind old prejudices. Those who refuse to change need to learn to let go so the happiness of the new generation can be complete." I heard every word like a blade against skin. Guests around me murmured. A few turned to look at me with pity. Clare sat beside Marcus, smiling awkwardly, eyes glistening. I clenched my teeth and gripped the chair. For years I had gotten used to silence, to enduring contemptuous looks. But this time the humiliation came on my daughter's wedding day. While Marcus kept performing, Aiden slipped out of the crowd and found my table. His face had gone pale, his breath quick. He sat beside me and whispered, "Grandpa." I saw him out on the terrace. He was with 3 men in suits. They were talking about something, not the wedding. I turned to him. His eyes were genuinely frightened. "Did you hear anything?" He shook his head, his hand trembling. "Just a few words. Honeymoon, bank account, and another name. Not Marcus." My chest tightened. The vague warning now had added proof. Marcus wasn't just after Clare. He had a plan for the family's money, too. And those men, who were they? On stage, Marcus lifted his glass to finish his speech. Applause thundered. He kissed Clare, then looked up and swept his gaze back to me. The curl of his smile was a dare. "You can't do anything, Franklin." Right then I knew. This wedding day wasn't just the start of a new chapter for Clare. It was the day I had to decide. To keep silent, or begin an open war with the man threatening my family. The reception rolled on with music, laughter, and lights pooling over the polished wood floor. But inside me, every tick of the wall clock pounded, warning that something was happening behind these doors, something Clare knew nothing about. Aiden sat beside me, eyes never leaving Marcus. I noticed his hand shaking under the table, fingernails pressing into the white cloth. He had never known fear like this, and that fear made me more alert than anything. About an hour after the speech, as guests spilled into the garden for photos, I saw Aiden slip through the terrace door at the side of the hall. I followed at a distance. Outside, the February air was knife cold, our breath frosting in the dark. Through a row of decorative trees, I saw Marcus. He stood with 3 men in black suits, who looked nothing like friends or colleagues. One of them pulled out a cigarette, the flare lighting a sharp face, high cheekbones, narrow eyes, tight lips. I heard Marcus chuckle, voice low but clear. "Vincent Kerr is still clean, and Marcus Hale is already dead. In Seattle and Phoenix, everything is done. Now we just have to take the rest here." The real name. It felt like a punch to my chest. He wasn't Marcus Hale. He was Vincent Kerr. One of the 3 asked, "What about the honeymoon?" Marcus, or rather Kerr, replied, smug. Easy. She carries all her paperwork, bank info and passwords saved in her wallet. In Cancun, I only need a few days. When we return, the accounts will be empty. And that old man, with the Cherry Creek house and a pension fund worth nearly $500,000, all of it will be mine. My feet froze on the cold stone. Every word fell like a hammer. Beside me, Aiden hid behind a planter, eyes wide, face drained. He turned to me, lips forming. Grandpa, what do we do? I pressed a finger to my lips for silence. One sound, and Kerr would know we were listening. One of the men snorted. You're bold, Vincent. Get married and disappear. What about the federal cops? Kerr smirked. William Harrison, Daniel Hartman. They've got a dozen names to chase, but Vincent Kerr is clean. No trail. Nothing sticks to me. They all burst out laughing, the sound echoing coldly through the wedding garden. I tugged Aiden back, my heart pounding. We slipped into the hall and merged with the flow of guests before anyone noticed. A romantic ballad swelled. Guests clapped as the bride and groom stepped onto the dance floor. Claire beamed, eyes shining, and I had just heard the plan to make her the next victim of a professional con man. I leaned down and whispered to Aiden, Son, from this moment, we know for sure. Marcus Hale doesn't exist. He is Vincent Kerr, a wanted fugitive, and our job is to protect your mother. Aiden nodded, trembling, gripping my hand like a lifeline. I felt his young pulse racing, hot and urgent. In the hall, Kerr, held Claire and spun her across the floor. Lights bathed them, applause rose. To the guests, he was the perfect husband. To me, he was a predator who had just bared his fangs. The romantic music swelled, but in my ears only one line roared. If I stay silent, I will lose Claire forever. If I act, this entire ballroom will explode with the truth. And I, Franklin Doyle, knew that from this moment on, the game had become a life and death chess match. As the song ended, applause thundered through the hall. Claire rested her head on Marcus's shoulder, her face blissfully innocent. My throat burned dry. Every word from Vincent Kerr out on the terrace still pounded in my head. He didn't just want money, he wanted my daughter's entire life. When everyone crowded toward the cake cutting, I pushed through the guests. My heart hammered, each step like walking on thin ice. Claire stood by a 3-tier wedding cake frosted in white, smiling radiantly. Marcus whispered something in her ear, his hand possessive on her waist. I came forward, forcing my voice to stay even. Claire, can I speak to you in private for a moment? Marcus turned, a flash of cold in his eyes that vanished behind a cordial smile. Mr. Doyle, today is a happy day. Whatever it is can wait until tomorrow. Don't tire Claire out. I held his gaze, refusing to yield. Just 5 minutes, with my daughter. Claire wavered, glancing at Marcus. He tightened his grip, as if locking down every choice. Sweetheart, the guests are waiting. Your father, he's probably about to say things that will upset you again. In that instant, I thought Claire would nod along like so many times before. But then her eyes met mine, a look both trembling and pleading. Maybe she recognized the urgency in these old eyes. Marcus, she said for the first time that evening, cutting him off. Let me hear my father. Just a few minutes. His face tensed, his jaw clenched, though his smile fought to hold. I saw a vein rise on his temple. Of course, he said loudly. Families need private moments. But don't take too long. People will wonder. Claire nodded, then turned to me. Dad, go to the prep room. I'll follow. We left the hall and crossed the red-carpeted corridor. Laughter and chatter faded, replaced by my heartbeat drumming like a war drum. I opened the prep room, the place where brides fix their dress before the ceremony, now empty, a faint veil of perfume lingering. Claire entered, the train of her gown sweeping the floor, her face shifting from radiant to taut. She folded her arms, leaning lightly on the vanity, eyes on me, guarded. Dad, she said softly, make it quick. I know you don't like Marcus, but please, don't ruin today. I stepped closer and lowered my voice. Claire, I'm not here to ruin it. I'm here to save you. She frowned, ready to protest, but I raised a hand. Just listen. Only listen. If you don't believe me, I'll be silent forever. Her eyes flickered, breath quickening. I knew I had only a few minutes before Marcus grew suspicious and walked in. I slid my hand into my jacket and felt the still warm paper, the printout with the name Vincent Kerr in bold. Just 1 hour earlier, after hearing what Aiden overheard on the terrace, I called David, an old friend at the Denver police office. He whispered over the phone, Franklin, you were right. The name Marcus Hale doesn't exist. This man is actually Vincent Kerr. He's wanted in Arizona and Seattle for financial fraud, but because those are state warrants, Colorado has no record yet. That's why here he's living easy like a clean businessman. And you guessed it. His plan is to flee to Mexico after the wedding and cut loose from everything. When the mugshot came up on my phone screen, my heart stopped. I had to brace against the wall not to collapse. It wasn't just a naked truth. It was a death sentence for Claire's happiness. I printed the file at the country club's business center and folded it tight into my pocket. If Claire saw that face, her whole world would collapse. But would she believe me? Or turn her back on me again like when she once defended Jason? The prep room door clicked shut, sealing off the music and laughter outside. It was just me and Claire in a small space steeped in perfume and the vanity's warm yellow light. She folded her arms, shoulders trembling slightly, eyes wary. Dad, what are you trying to say? Her voice stretched taut as a wire. Don't turn today into a tragedy. I drew a breath and reached into my jacket. The papers rustled. I set them slowly on the vanity before her. Bold black letters, the name Vincent Kerr, and a mugshot of Marcus's face, distorted, cold, snake-eyed. Claire froze. I saw her throat jerk, her hand flying to her mouth. Who is this? She whispered. His real name, Vincent Kerr, a con man wanted in Arizona and Seattle. Colorado's records aren't updated, so you had no way to know. That's why he chose to marry here and disappear to Mexico with all your money? Claire let out a short, shaky laugh that sounded like a sob. No, Marcus can't. He just danced with me, kissed me in front of hundreds of people. This must be a mistake. I gripped her hand, voice tight. I asked David, my old friend at the Denver police office. He checked the system directly. This is public. It cannot be wrong. She trembled and snatched her phone from her dress pocket. Perfectly made-up fingers now jabbed frantically at the screen. I saw her eyes lock onto the words, Wanted, Vincent Kerr, Fraud, Embezzlement, Arizona, Washington State. A mugshot of Marcus in a suit flashed up, his brazen eyes under the booking lights. The phone slipped from Claire's hand and clacked onto the wood floor. She clutched her head, mascara streaking black down her cheeks. Oh, God, it can't be. I believed him. I told you to stay silent for him. I knelt and held her shaking shoulders. Claire, this isn't your fault. He's a professional. David told me. This is a refined playbook, not a whim. He targets women with past wounds, plays the successful businessman, accelerates the relationship so you trust him completely. Then he seeps into finances, asks about the house, the accounts, then uses joint investment excuses to make you sign papers that look harmless. In Seattle, he made a woman sign account authorization and vanished in 48 hours. I paused, voice dropping. Once he has the money, he takes the victim on an overseas honeymoon. There, he swaps SIMs, drains accounts through accomplices, then disappears before the victim realizes it. Colorado hasn't updated the records. That's why he chose to marry here. After the ceremony, he'll fly straight to Mexico, and everything will vanish with him. Claire sank into the chair, eyes reddening. My God, so he planned to do the same to me. I nodded slowly. Yes, but this time he picked the wrong family. I squeezed her hand. I've called the police. They're on their way. We just need to stay calm and not tip him off. At least 15 more minutes. Claire looked at herself in the mirror and dabbed away the smeared mascara with the handkerchief I gave her. Her eyes shifted from despair to steel. Okay, I'll play my part until the police arrive. If he sees me fall apart, he'll suspect. I set a hand on her shoulder, low but firm. You don't have to pretend to love him. You just have to pretend you don't know the truth yet. Outside, the music changed to a brighter tune. Laughter filtered in. We both knew this was only the brief quiet before the storm. Claire straightened her gown, drew a deep breath, and took my hand. The prep room door swung open. Outside, Vincent Kerr, the man she had just called her husband, was still smiling, waiting for her return. And we, father and daughter, knew that a single wrong glance could collapse everything before the police arrived. The prep room door swung open. Music, laughter, and dazzling light rushed in like a wave. Claire drew a deep breath, then took my hand. Her shoulders still trembled lightly, but her eyes were different, cold, clear, and in control. Outside, Vincent Kerr, the man the whole hall still called Marcus Hale, was raising a glass with the guests at the front tables. Crystal lights reflected on his face, making him look bright, confident, and utterly innocent. No one knew that in just a few minutes, everything around him would crumble like smoke. Claire strode back out to cheers. The bride is back! Someone in the band shifted to a new ballad. Marcus turned, the smile seemingly carved onto his face. You scared me, darling, he said, sliding an arm around her waist and kissing her hair. 5 minutes without you felt like 5 years. Just touched up my powder, Claire answered lightly. No one noticed that beneath that makeup, her lips were trembling. I stood a few tables away, trying to appear at ease. Champagne shimmered in my glass. No one knew that the phone in my pocket was buzzing. A text. From David. Response units in position. 3 minutes. My heart hammered. I glanced around. 2 men in gray suits had just entered through the main doors and blended into the crowd. They looked like ordinary guests, but their eyes swept slowly, sharp as knives. Aiden sat at a table near the stage, pretending to play with his cutlery, but I saw him furtively searching for me. When our eyes met, I gave a small nod. He understood the signal and lowered his head, biting his lip. The song ended, and the MC laughed. Time for the couple to thank their parents. Marcus took the microphone. First, he said in a deep, resonant voice, I want to thank the man who raised such a wonderful woman as Clare. Mr. Franklin Doyle, please stand. The hall applauded. I forced a smile, feeling as if I were standing in a theater where the role itself could kill. Marcus stepped down and handed me the mic. His eyes probed, testing. What will you say to us today, father-in-law? I took the mic. In that moment, hundreds of eyes were on me, and only one person I looked straight at. Claire. She gave a tiny nod, a sign to keep calm. I smiled faintly. I only wish you both a peaceful and honest beginning. True happiness isn't in money or reputation, but in whether people dare to live truthfully with each other. Marcus smirked, a brief chill flashing in his eyes. A very profound piece of advice? I nodded and set the mic on the table. In my pocket, the phone vibrated again. 2 units outside. Action in 60 seconds. Glasses chimed. Claire leaned in to pour him more wine, her hand a little shaky but her voice sweet. Are you tired, Marcus? No, my love. Why do you ask? Because your eyes look different than before. He chuckled, but his gaze flicked swiftly to me. Maybe I'm a little tired. At this age, parties like this take a toll. I knew he was probing. A man like Kerr always senses danger before it touches him. I gripped my glass and counted the beats of my heart. Suddenly Aiden stood, pretending to head for the drink station. Kerr turned his head for a second, wary. Claire caught Aiden's hand and tugged him back. Don't go far, sweetheart. Stay close to Mom. A simple line, but to me it was a signal. The police were in place. From the corner of the hall I saw the 2 gray-suited men switch positions. One lifted a hand to his earpiece. The music still bubbled. Guests still laughed. In my head there was only one sound, the heartbeat of truth drawing near. Confirmed. Warrant visible in NCIC. Extradition from Arizona and Washington approved. Proceed. Then a voice boomed over a microphone from somewhere, low and cold. Vincent Curras, we need to speak with you. Claire's champagne flute slipped from her hand and shattered on the wooden floor. The entire wedding hall fell into sudden silence. 9, the man's voice rang through the mic, deep and clear enough to freeze the room. Vincent Kerr, we need to speak with you. The music cut off. The clatter of cutlery and half-formed laughter vanished as if sucked out of the air. Hundreds of eyes pivoted to the center table, where Marcus, or rather Vincent, stood rigid. You've got the wrong man, he blurted, his voice rising. My name is Marcus Hale, a businessman from... One of the 2 gray-suited officers stepped forward, flashed a badge, and spoke with calm, icy precision. Denver Police, in coordination with the FBI. We have a warrant for your arrest, at the request of the states of Arizona and Washington. Legal name, Vincent Kerr. Charges, financial fraud, asset misappropriation, and identity falsification. He laughed harshly, lifting both hands. This is a cheap joke. You think my bride will believe you? But Claire was already on her feet. Her voice shook, yet it was firm. I believe them. The hall held its breath. This is the man I just called my husband, and he is also the one who deceived me and my family. I have proof. She pulled the folded sheet from her wedding dress, the printout I had handed her in the prep room, and held it up before hundreds of guests. This is a real wanted notice. The name, the photo, the charges, everything matches. Whispers surged across the room. A few women covered their mouths. A few men muttered curses under their breath. Vincent Kerr turned to me, his eyes boiling with hatred. You miserable old man. You ruined everything. I didn't answer. I only looked at him, with the eyes of a father who has lost enough to know that sometimes justice arrives. Not with fists, but with truth, spoken at the right moment. The 2 officers moved in and cuffed him. You have the right to remain silent, he thrashed and shouted. You'll regret this. I have lawyers. I have people on the inside. Where are your people? Claire asked, her voice calm to the point of chilling. In Mexico? He froze. In that instant, the mask of confidence slid off, revealing his true face, fearful, venomous, and defeated. An officer nudged him toward the doors. The cuffs gleamed under the crystal lights, like a symbol of overdue justice. As they led him away, Aiden ran to me and pressed against my side. I laid a hand on his shoulder and felt his heartbeat race like a drum. You did great, I whispered. Without you, we wouldn't have gotten out. Claire came and stood beside me. Her face was streaked with mascara, but her gaze shone brighter than ever. Dad, she choked. I'm sorry. I didn't believe you. I shook my head, my voice rough. No, I'm the one who knew the truth and still let you hurt. But sometimes, for someone to grow, we have to let them touch the fire once. She lowered her head onto my shoulder, tears soaking my lapel. The murmurs around the hall eased, and then someone began to clap. Then another. Then the whole room applauded. Not for the disaster, but for the courage of a woman who stood up and spoke the truth. I looked around. The country club's warm lights washed over faces of shock and tenderness. And in that moment, I understood. The shame was never ours, but his, the man in cuffs. Outside the glass doors, police lights flashed red and blue, reflecting off flower-laden tables. Radio chatter mingled with the winter wind. I set a hand on my daughter's shoulder and said softly, Now you can start over, from yourself. No more secrets. No more lies. Claire nodded, tears falling even as she smiled. I will start over, Dad. But this time I won't chase anyone. I'll rebuild my life with my own hands. I smiled and squeezed her shoulder. And I'll be there whenever you need me. Aiden wrapped his arms around us both and whispered, It's over now, right, Grandpa? I looked toward the doors, where Vincent Kerr was being pushed into the squad car, his head bowed. Yes, Aiden, I said. It's over. Justice came late, but it came. As the patrol car rolled out of the country club gates, red and blue lights washed over our faces. mine, Claire's, and Aiden's, and I knew that tonight we weren't just seeing off a criminal. We were also saying goodbye to a blind chapter of our lives. My daughter had cried, not because she lost a husband, but because she found herself again, and I understood that being a father isn't control. It's daring to step into the dark to pull your child out when she can no longer see the light. Sometimes justice arrives late, but if you don't give up, it still arrives, like tonight, amid an unfinished wedding song and glasses not yet empty. If you've ever witnessed something like this, someone you love, a friend, or even you yourself deceived by sweet promises, share your story in the comments below. Because who knows, your experience might save someone from a hand like Vincent Kerr's. Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss true stories about family, betrayal, and justice, where each telling isn't just to hear, but to remember. Thank you for staying with me to the very last minute of this story. I'm Franklin Doyle, and this is The Whisper at the Wedding.